Hello everyone, how are you today? Do you enjoy high school love stories? Let's dive into such a romantic love story, promising many plot twists that will make your heart flutter once again. Let's get to know the characters. Lin Yuzin, 16 years old. A petite and gentle girl with a strong soul, excellent in academics. Comes from a normal family background with divorced parents. Zhang Qian, 18 years old. Handsome and academically outstanding. A skilled tattoo artist who owns his own tattoo parlor. Talented in shooting. Comes from a wealthy family. I'll introduce the supporting characters later. Their love story begins like this. At the end of August, the weather was sunny. A few days before the new school year started, the weather became cool thanks to some rain. On that afternoon, Lin Yuzin stood at the entrance of the shopping center, watching raindrops bounce off the flat stone floor, creating splashes that wet the shoes of those standing outside. After waiting for 10 minutes with no sign of the rain stopping, Lin Yuzin reached into her shopping bag, checked her phone for calls and messages, walked to a large glass corner, draped the bag over her arm, raised 2 fingers and a thumb to create a pose, then raised her camera, rotating it to choose a scene, closing one eye. The city was bustling, with houses connected to each other, large shopping centers, and numerous lights. This scene was both familiar and strange. Lin Yuzin had arrived in city just 2 days ago. 3 months ago, she witnessed her parents' marriage falling apart. Lin Ji and Meng Weiquo's marriage ended after years of disputes. Before their divorce, the two had a physical fight. It was 6:30 in the evening on the second day after deciding to divorce. The three of them sat at the dining table, having their last meal together. They discussed everything from household assets to Lin Yuzin's custody. Lin Ji remained calm and composed throughout, saying from the house to the car, everything belonged to him, and she didn't need anything. Meng Weiquo, upon hearing the first half, was pleased, but when the second half was spoken, he furrowed his brow. Lin Ji, with a hint of impatience, said, "I don't have time to take care of her." "What do you mean by I don't have time? Do you think I do?" Meng Weiquo retorted. "You do," Lin Ji laughed coldly. "After so many years, are you pretending to be busy now?" Initially angry, Meng Weiquo reluctantly accepted custody of his daughter as all the property had been claimed. They argued for a long time, while Lin Yuzin sat alone, eating. They treated her like a dog, seemingly not understanding human language. No one bothered to pay attention to her, and her feelings were essentially disregarded. Lin Ji's family was wealthy, and Meng Weiquo and she were college classmates. They moved from the countryside to the city for college, excelling academically, being articulate and gentle, and additionally, both were good-looking. At the age of 18 and 19, wearing a worn silver t-shirt, the bright-faced, tall, and handsome young man pursued Lin Ji, who accepted the proposal. A poor student and a wealthy heiress married but eventually divorced due to their differences. Lin Yuzin initially thought that if her parents considered her a burden and discarded her, she would feel very sad. However, when she actually witnessed the division of property and custody between them, she didn't feel any sadness or disappointment. Instead, there was a certain numbness in her emotions. Every month, Lin Ji provided her with a fixed allowance, and Lin Yuzin lived with her father. A month after the divorce, she met Meng Weiquo's new girlfriend, Guanxiang Mei. Their love blossomed at the speed of light. Lin Yuzin found Guanxiang Mei handsome, eloquent, and genuinely good. Many foolish wealthy women would willingly marry him. On the second day of bringing her here, the two of them went on their honeymoon. Before leaving, Guanxiang Mei smiled at her and said, "From now on, consider this your home." Lin Yuzin nodded softly. "Your child went out to play with friends these 2 days, probably returning tomorrow. I've told him that during our absence, let that kid take care of your child a bit. In the future, he will be your child's older brother. In a moment, I'll give his mobile phone number to you, so the kids can contact each other." Guanxiang Mei continued speaking. Lin Yuzin nodded again. Guan Xiangmei was very pleased and added, if you need anything, just tell Aunt Zhang. Don't feel restricted, everyone here likes you a lot. Lin Yuzhen glanced at Aunt Zhang beside her, who was looking at her disdainfully. Exiting the shopping center, it was quite hot outside. Lin Yuzhen looked at the rain and checked the time on her phone. It was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. She lightly jumped on her toes, testing her legs that had become somewhat stiff. The phone rang. It was the number she saved last night, her supposed older brother's number. Lin Yuzhen answered, older brother. The guy on the other end was shocked to be addressed as her older brother, remained silent for at least 10 seconds, then asked, finished shopping? Yes. I have a cold, can't come to pick you up. The older brother spoke coldly. Lin Yuzhen truly felt her assumptions were accurate. She was always a sincere person, disdainful of anyone pretending to act. Moreover, this person's acting skills were lacking. Let's see Lin Yuzhen's acting skills. She said, is it serious? What's your temperature? Her small, cautious voice was soft and pleasing to the ear. The other side remained silent for 10 seconds again before hesitantly saying, 40. Let me help you call 119. Lin Yuzhen said sarcastically, 119 is the emergency number for fire and rescue. The guy hung up the phone. Lin Yuzhen's new house is located in a villa area right in the city center, just a short distance from 2 squares, surrounded by a deteriorating and old residential area. In the central area of a large city like this, under normal circumstances, there are 2 types of people, those who are poor and can only afford a small room in an alley, and those who are wealthy enough to buy high-end real estate priced between 2 to 3 million yuan per square meter. As the car travels halfway, the rain stops. In the air, there's the smell of damp soil. Thinking about having to stay in the same place with him, the brother she has never met, with a frail and sickly body, along with the unpleasant gaze of Aunt Zhang, Lin Yuzhen became so angry that she breathed heavily. She got off the car behind that old-style residential area, planning to wander around for 2 more hours before returning. Lin Yuzhen walked through a narrow alley and stopped in front of a beautifully decorated house, which indeed resembled the entrance to a tattoo shop. My tattoo shop? The iron gate of the house wasn't high. She tiptoed and gently pushed the black iron door. A small creaking sound echoed, gradually opening up. The small courtyard inside looked quite wild at first glance. Lin Yuzhen noticed that there was someone in the room. The long dark gray sofa, thick carpet, numerous scattered cushions and throw pillows adorned the room. On the sofa, there were 3 people with hair standing upright like 3 broomsticks, looking straight at her without any movement. The atmosphere was eerie. One of them even maintained the pose of holding a cigarette towards his lips, frozen in midair as if someone had pressed the pause button. Afterward, the first broomstick-like figure moved its eyes from her face to her clothes. She felt as if the 3 gang leaders were scrutinizing her for about 5 or 6 seconds. She raised her hand a bit hesitantly and said, "Oh?" One of them turned back to the sofa and called out, "Qian family." It was only now that Lin Yuzhen could see clearly. On the long sofa, there was a 4th person. This mysterious figure covered with a dark gray carpet, blending into the color of the sofa, with 2 additional pillows placed on the stomach, slept without any movement. The person next to him covered half of his body, and Lin Yuzhen could only see a part that was truly unclear. The sleeping beauty finally stirred and snorted from the nose, leaning against the sofa with a pair of very long legs stretched straight up, turning his face inward to continue sleeping. The thick carpet still covered his head, and Lin Yuzhen was afraid he would suffocate her. The first broomstick-like figure cursed, shook his body, and slapped his buttocks, saying, "Damn it, don't sleep anymore, get up and serve the guests." The sleeping beauty, who was originally resting peacefully, was disturbed 3 or 4 times and couldn't bear it. "I'll take care of the guests. Roll over." A very impulsive gang brother. The little girl in the dress standing over there, with eyes as clear as transparent pearls, at first glance, she seems like a well-behaved little cutie, but she really doesn't fit in with the surrounding atmosphere. Xiang Han, one of the three sitting there, shook his head and said, really? I have mistaken this little cutie. Lin Yuzhen nodded in greeting, intending to say it's okay, she was just casually looking at the house, and she should let him continue sleeping. But before she could speak, someone called the sleeping person to wake up. Zhang Qian had not slept all night and went out in the morning. He had only slept for a few hours, and in the midst of not having enough sleep, he grumpily muttered a fuck. Lin Yuzhen waited for the appearance of the fourth house cleaning broom. He threw the dark gray blanket covering his face, revealing the face of a gangster brother. Even at first glance, he probably wasn't much older than her, making him a teenage gangster. The teenage gangster had short black hair neatly trimmed, one hand supporting on the sofa cushion, sitting up. He lowered his head, arms relaxed on his knees, and the sleeves rolled up, revealing a pale and thin wrist. He raised his head slowly, with long narrow eyes, slightly slanted, now the eyelids drooping down, exuding a beautiful look. After 10 seconds of gathering his thoughts, he looked over, yawned, and stood up. Tattoo? Lin Yuzhen replied, yes. Where? Zhang Qian turned to another place, lifting the recently covered blanket, and casually draped it over the back of the sofa. From behind, seeing two straight and long thighs made one want to whistle. The black outfit was a bit wrinkled, and a bit of the waistband was exposed inside the back of the pants, revealing a section of a white, slim, and bony wrist. He turned his head slowly, his black eyes long and narrow, and at this moment, the corners of his eyes drooped, incredibly beautiful. Lin Yuzhen couldn't help but whisper in a low voice, this part of the butt. House cleaning brooms number 1, 2, and 3 were stunned. Zhang Qian turned to look at her, his sleepy face calm. Lin Yuzhen felt that her voice was too small, so she said louder, is it possible to tattoo in that area? Zhang Qian raised an eyebrow, yes. Oh, Lin Yuzhen picked up a piece of paper with an extremely ugly cat drawn on it, it's really cute. Zhang Qian, who had just gone to the side, pulled the curtain, a hidden corner to work. He walked over to her and glanced at her, hello kitty. What? That's Hello Kitty. She dryly laughed twice, is this drawn by the little friend in the house? Zhang Qian yawned again, his voice soft and a bit tired, I drew it. Brother, don't deceive me, okay? Can you tell me if this painting is really drawn by the expert in tattooing himself? Doing both work and chatting until it was finished, when she left, the first house cleaning broom even inserted the studio's business card for her, making her consider the possibility of coming back here. The whole process was maintained with that posture by Zhang Qian, standing bonelessly, still with a sleepy face and eyes that wouldn't open. Xiang Han admired, this type of person looks like a little fairy inside, enthusiastic, you know? Outside, they pretend to be cold. It's really a fairy. Zhang Qian's gaze stayed in midair, and the image of the little fairy he saw just now suddenly appeared in his mind. It was good-looking, with smooth and straight legs, and the skin was so white that it gave a translucent feeling. But it was also empty, without any focus, a girl who seemed bored and dreamy. In short, at first glance, it really didn't look like a fairy. 2 minutes later, Zhang Qian sarcastically said, you don't just like this sexy and debauched style. The more Xiang Han spoke, the more he regretted, why did I give the studio's business card just now? Maybe I should give her my personal contact number too, as pure and obedient as a small milk cat, right? Zhang Qian raised his head and glanced at him, feeling a bit funny, obedient? His eyes fell on the ugly Hello Kitty drawing lying neatly on the table. Even if it's a small milk cat, when she takes action, she can make you boneless. Xiang Han felt that he was really prejudiced against other people's daughters, this little fairy with little life experience, she gets scared just by starting to tease. Ah, Zhang Qian stretched out his long legs, lying forward, tapping his index finger lightly on the edge of the table, lazily saying, tease her. After Lin Yuzhen left the tattoo studio, she took 2 more rounds before returning. It was much darker, and she received a call from Guanxiang Mei's Li family driver. Li was their driver, and she had only met him once when she got off the plane. They were silent during the drive from the airport to the new house, not talking much. But he seemed easy to get along with. When he called and said he would come to pick her up, she had just stepped out of the pharmacy. The white plastic bag contained various small colorful boxes, stacked into a large pile, covering everything from fever to runny nose. If her brother hated her, she couldn't fight him every day. Lin Yuzin's finger picked up the plastic bag and swung it back and forth, one hand holding the phone to her ear, not speaking. She didn't have many friends before, and even fewer now. There were only two close friends, Lu Jiaheng and Jing Ju. She didn't think they were calling. Hello, the other end immediately responded, Miss Lin, I am Mr. Li. It's nothing, just asking, when will you return? I'm coming back now, Lin Yuzin said. There was a pause on the other end, then he said, send me your location, I will come to pick you up. It's getting dark, and the little girl is not familiar with the roads here. It's not very safe to be alone. Lin Yuzin suddenly stopped. Her movement slowed down, and her eyes scanned the surroundings. After a while, she said, no need, thank you. I'll manage to go back on my own in a bit. Mr. Li laughed and said, no trouble at all. I'm a driver, and these are the things I do. If you take a picture of the nearby place and send it to me, I can find you. Lin Yuzin agreed, cupping her phone and taking a photo to send over. As their house was not far away, in less than a few minutes, a black Bentley was parked by the roadside. Glancing at the license plate, Lin Yuzin picked up her bag and walked over, opening the car door and getting inside. Mr. Li greeted her, and she slightly bent her body, saying, thank you. Mr. Li responded with a bit of embarrassment, no trouble at all, it's what I do. Lin Yuzin remained silent, looking at the unfamiliar road outside the window. She glanced at Mr. Li driving in front of her, wearing a very formal white shirt, with the sleeves rolled up, revealing a yellow stain from wear. Mr. Li coughed, you'll start school tomorrow, right? Lin Yuzin turned her head, yes. Did you buy everything you need? If there's anything missing, just tell me. No, everything's bought already. That's good. If anything is missing, let me know. Mr. Li repeated once again. Yes, the small and gentle voice of the girl replied, thank you. Lin Yuzin tilted her head again, looking out of the car window. She recalled the times when she was still a child, often scolded. Lin Ji pursued perfection and couldn't accept any flaws on her daughter. Perhaps she felt that she and her father were of the same kind. Meng Wai Kuo, on the other hand, spoiled her. When she was young, she would start to study, just hoping that Lin Ji could encourage her once. There were times when she would sneak away to cry quietly because of her mother's criticism and neglect. Later on, she formed a habit of adapting to such things, easily accepting everything and learning how to deal with the people around her. But at this moment, the person in front of her was a kind and sincere stranger, and she didn't know how to react. The car quickly entered the courtyard and stopped at the entrance. The sky was getting dark. Lin Yuzin thanked Mr. Li once again before getting out of the car, turning towards the entrance. Walking halfway, she heard a teenager's voice behind her, sounding impatient, "Why are you so late?" Lin Yuzin unconsciously turned her head, only to realize that she hadn't informed him. Just a moment ago, she didn't notice, and now there was a teenager standing by the gate, walking towards old Li. "I've been waiting for you for half an hour, I'm starving to death." Old Li laughed heartily. "Hungry? Come on, let's go home. What do you want to eat tonight?" The lights in the flower garden emitted a warm golden light, illuminating the two of them, meeting for the first time. The teenager paid no attention to the gaze from this side, furrowing his eyebrows, still seeming indifferent. "I don't want to eat, just go." Lin Yuzin turned around, pulled out her keys to open the door. In the spacious and silent room, passing through the foyer into the living room, the bright chandelier illuminated the room, the TV was on, and a cleaned fruit tray was on the coffee table. However, there was no one on the sofa. She suddenly felt extremely frustrated. Lin Yuzhen walked into the kitchen, poured water into a glass from the cabinet, sighed deeply, held the glass standing alone on the dining table, glanced at her phone for a moment, then turned away from the kitchen, preparing to go upstairs. Just as she took a couple of steps, she lifted her head and saw that there was more than one person on the sofa. The young man was also looking at her, his facial features resembling Guan's young Mei. Lin Yuzhen quickly greeted, "Elder brother." From childhood to adulthood, she hadn't cultivated any different demeanor, just an extremely sweet tongue. Indeed, it worked well with the person in front of her. Lin Yuzhen walked over, took a small white bag from her bag, placed it on the coffee table in front of him, and apologized in a soft voice, "I'm really sorry, this afternoon, I was just joking. I didn't intentionally give you the fire department's number, but because you said you were hot, like 40 degrees. Fu Mantu's face grew angrier. Lin Yuzhen acted as if she didn't notice his attitude. "Pay attention to your health, drink plenty of hot water." Fu Mantu remained silent, on the verge of standing up in anger. "Warm water, I'm truly sorry." Lin Yuzhen quickly corrected her statement. Fu Mantu felt a bit choked up, frustrated and not sure what to do. Lin Yuzhen quickly ascended the stairs, and Fu Mantu grabbed the plastic bag she left on the tea table, looking inside. Inside were several boxes of cold medicine and fever-reducing drugs. He suddenly felt somewhat unnatural, and his mood became extremely complicated. Fortunately, she wasn't that detestable. Or perhaps, not detestable enough? Lin Yuzhen, feeling hungry, woke up at 9 p.m. She had been sleeping since she returned home without having dinner. Lin Yuzhen sighed, reached out to pick up the water glass on the bedside table, drank a whole glass of water, and felt a little relief from the hunger and thirst. She lay back down, staring at the ceiling, not knowing what to do. She then remembered old Li and the teenager, probably his son. If she were him, with a father like that, could she also act coquettish? She felt admiration. Regardless, leaving her old home, the divorce of Lin Ji and Meng Weiquo, even though it didn't matter much to her, still brought a bit of sadness. Before, despite the hardships, there was still a family. Now, she didn't even have that. Lin Yuzhen rubbed her face with her hand, stroked her tangled hair, turned over on the bed, and vaguely thought of old Li and the teenager again. Lin Yuzhen was impressed with the old man's kindness and the teenager's resemblance to him. If she were in his shoes, with a father like that, she might also learn to be coquettish. She felt a sense of admiration for them. In any case, she had left her old home. The divorce of Lin Ji and Meng Weiquo, although it didn't affect her much, still brought some sadness. Before, despite the difficulties, they were still a family. Now, she had lost even that. Lin Yuzhen raised her hand to touch her face, smoothed her messy hair, and turned over on the bed. She put on some clothes, grabbed her keys and phone, and prepared to go downstairs to eat. There should be food in the kitchen, but to avoid unnecessary trouble, she didn't want to bother. Lin Yuzhen walked in the direction of the old alley across the street. She remembered seeing a convenience store there in the afternoon, about a 10-minute walk away. When she saw the 7 to 11 sign of the convenience store chain, she walked in. Lin Yuzhen picked up a portion of rice, a mixed fruit juice, and wanted a portion of udon. There were only 3 types left: rib balls, cabbage with sticky rice and tofu, and a grilled fish block. After paying, she took the paper cup and went to the store entrance, squatting at the door to put a piece in her mouth. At this time, it was not as hot as in the afternoon. The city at night had a slightly different temperature from the daytime, with the wind carrying a moist and cool feeling. It was not too cold, just comfortable, blowing away all the lingering worries of the past 2 days. Lin Yuzhen was in a good mood as she chewed the round ball. She bent down to put the second ball in her mouth, then lifted her head. She saw a group of people coming out from across the street. At first, the distance was too far, and she couldn't see clearly. Later, as this group approached the edge of the road, it was clear that they intended to come in her direction. She only saw 3 trees with numbers 1, 2, and 3, and behind them was a brother who looked like a gangster dozing off. The gangster brother had probably just had a nap, and at first glance, he wasn't tired. He was still wearing the clothes from the afternoon, with an added shirt as a jacket. His hands were in his trouser pockets, and he bowed his head to listen to the person next to him talking. Still quite afraid of the cold. She didn't know what they were saying, but the 2 trees in front were smiling. The 4 people crossed the street together and came to Lin Yuzin's place. The last tree finally saw her. Lin Yuzin hesitated, not sure whether to greet him casually or not. In fact, she had no intention of going to the tattoo studio again, and she was quite sure she wouldn't meet them again. She stuffed the entire skewer into her mouth, threw the small stick into the paper cup, and was about to wave casually before leaving. Then Zhang Qian raised his head and looked over. Then they passed by, and another group of people appeared in the alley. The second tree cursed, then began to roll up his sleeves, entering a combat-ready state. Lin Yuzin understood the situation. This was a prearranged fight, a showdown between the gang leaders. The 2 groups gathered in the same place, and everyone who passed by took a detour. Lin Yuzin sat crouched on the steps of the convenience store, holding a cup of Odin, immediately looking a bit captivating. The sinister gang leader tilted his head, giving her a glance. Lin Yuzin, having her fair share of life experiences as a girl, wasn't afraid of the indecent gaze of the unruly teenager. She lifted her head, giving him a focused and courteous look, continuing to chew on a rib ball without avoiding or yielding. The sinister gang leader's eyes slid down to her elegantly white shorts, and stopped. He exhaled a puff of smoke, about to say something. Suddenly, Zhang Qian leaned forward, taking a few steps ahead to stand in front of the girl, blocking his line of sight. "What are you looking at?" Zhang Qian raised his chin. The sinister gang leader was surprised. Zhang Qian was straightforward, disturbing someone eating Odin, that's not polite. Originally, when Xianhan shouted about wanting to tease the girl, Zhang Qian also casually spoke. He basically didn't think they would meet again, and he didn't expect to encounter her immediately. Moreover, the girl seemed indifferent and uninterested in the world. She didn't seem afraid of anyone, not even when Zhang Qian and his friends confronted her. Even when Tran Suhao stared at her, she was curious and excited. Tran Suhao was someone Zhang Qian knew a bit, quite fond of showing off. Zhang Qian thought of himself as not entirely a good teenager or a righteous messenger, but good or bad, this girl was their guest. Helping her was the right thing to do. Tran Suhao was paying more attention to Zhang Qian than to the beautiful girl, making the situation even more lively. Behind Zhang Qian, the second tree loudly exclaimed, "Dad! Why are you rejecting my business?" Lin Yuzin bit into the fish cake, holding back a laugh as she looked up. She wanted to see the second tree's expression after saying these words, but Zhang Qian was quite tall. Standing in front of her, he blocked half of her vision. Moreover, she was sitting, and he was standing, making his legs look even longer. She could only see his. Lin Yuzin glanced at the gangster's buttocks for a moment, finished eating the fish cake, and discarded the skewer. Bending down to look, she had finished eating, leaving only a little soup. She was still not full, sighed, and let the paper cup fall down the steps next to her. Then she picked up the rice ball and started to unwrap it. The plastic bag made a rustling sound as she opened it. Zhang Qian turned his head, glancing at her. Lin Yuzin, oblivious to this, earnestly lowered her head to open the tightly sealed rice ball. Finally, after tearing off the packaging, she heard Zhang Qian say, "I'm a bit tired." The teenager had a monotonous tone, carrying a hint of nasal sound, revealing a reluctant weakness, so, hurry up, charge forward, settle it, and then go back to sleep. Tomorrow is a school day, and I have to catch up on homework. Lin Yuzin didn't see the expressions of the others, but she was so scared that her hands trembled. The rice ball she was unwrapping squished and fell to the ground. No, what kind of gangster is this? Too arrogant. Does he still have to go to school? And he needs to submit homework? The sinister gang leader remained calm, but his subordinates were losing patience. Lin Yuzhen also understood that Zhang Qian deserved to be hit for his attitude. The person who was about to attack took a few steps forward, half a head taller than Zhang Qian, looking quite sturdy. He wore a black tank top and sports shorts, exposing well-built thighs. His eyes looked dangerously sharp. After cursing and complaining, the second tree shouted loudly. Zhang Qian took a step forward and delivered a blow to the guy's stomach. The strike was heavy, and Lin Yuzhen could hear the sound of the impact. The guy's large legs convulsed, and he doubled over, still unable to react. Zhang Qian grabbed his head forcefully, pressing it down to the ground, and then met him in a wild and ruthless manner. No one spoke, not even Lin Yuzhen. She hesitated for a moment, torn between sneak away alone and let them know a word. After thinking for a few seconds, she still raised her hand, gently pulling the sleeve of the teenager standing in front of her. Zhang Qian, who was watching the intense fight, suddenly felt a slight pull from the sleeve of his shirt. Zhang Qian turned his head, lowering his eyes to look at his shirt. With 2 fingers gripping it, Lin Yuzhen, a small crescent moon, her nails trimmed rounded and clean, with a small white moon-like part on the fingernail. Behind it was a beautiful slender finger and a white wrist that seemed to be translucent. He lifted his eyelids, and his gaze moved up to look at the girl pulling his shirt. He furrowed his brow, showing a hint of suspicion. Lin Yuzhen loosened her grip, looking at the cashier inside the convenience store. She spoke in a low voice. It seems like she just reported to the police. On the other side, the intense scuffle continued, making a loud noise. Zhang Qian couldn't hear it clearly. He furrowed his brows and leaned down a bit, asking, "Huh?" Lin Yuzhen repeated into his ear, "I think that girl just reported to the police." He remained impassive, tilting his head slightly, increasing the distance a bit, and stood up straight. "Then let's go." Lin Yuzhen was puzzled and stood up with him, asking, "Huh? Aren't you going to report to the police?" Zhang Qian yawned, entering the 7-11. Lin Yuzhen was silent for 2 seconds, unable to hold back. "Why haven't you slept yet?" Lin Yuzhen glanced at Zhang Qian as he calmly walked around the refrigerator, receiving the fascinated and attentive look from the store clerk. He picked up a rice ball and then another. He actually still bought a bottle of water. Coming back, he also grabbed a pack of wet wipes, paid, and then when the cashier put the rice ball into the microwave to heat it, he opened the wet wipes, took out a sheet, and leaned against the counter to wipe his hands slowly. He lowered his head, his nose was quite high, and his forehead slanted down, covering half of his narrow and long black eyes. His eyelashes were not extremely long, but very dense. The lashes at the end of his eyes lifted slightly, giving a cold yet charming look. Zhang Qian took it, said thank you, threw the wet wipe into the trash can, turned around, and left the 7-11. Lin Yuzhen followed him outside. The night wind was cool, and the two passed by the entrance to the ongoing battle. The 2 teenagers quickly retreated from there, going to the end of the street. Lin Yuzhen stopped, turned her head to glance back, vaguely seeming to see some police officers. She turned around. "Are you really not worried about your friend?" Zhang Qian responded with a simple yes, without turning to look back, handing the rice ball to her. The teenager held out the meal in front of her, and Lin Yuzhen blinked her eyes in surprise, asking, "What? Didn't the thing just fall a moment ago?" Zhang Qian said. Whether it was due to the excitement of witnessing an interesting fight or not, Lin Yuzhen slept the best at night since she moved here 3 days ago. Even the next morning, when she opened her eyes, for a moment, it felt like she was still in her old house. Blinking her eyes, she noticed the pink silk-bordered curtain cascading down, thick curtains with a matching rug and a milky white carpet on the floor. Only then did she realize where she was. Guanxiang Mei was extremely meticulous. When Lin Yuzhen hadn't arrived yet, she had already prepared the room, even providing a set of expensive teddy bears and some sleepwear. Wrapped in the blanket, Lin Yuzhen rolled out of bed, washed and changed, then went downstairs. She sat with Fu Mintu for a rather stifling breakfast. During the silent meal, Lin Yuzhen wished him a good morning, but he didn't even lift his head, looking sullen from start to finish. Why did the mood of her stepbrother seem even worse today than yesterday? A man's thoughts are truly like a needle at the bottom of the sea, you can never know what makes him lose interest. She didn't bother to pay attention and, after finishing breakfast, she went back to her room. Just as she closed the door behind her, Meng Weikuo called. Lin Yuzhen, sitting cross-legged on the bed, answered the phone as she looked out the window. Dad. Xiao Yu, it's me. Guan Xiangmei said with a smile. Lin Yuzhen paused for a moment, obediently greeted her. Guan Xiangmei spoke in a gentle tone. You're going to school tomorrow, right? Yes. I've already contacted the school for you before. Minta's classes start next week. Tomorrow, let him take you. Okay. When you go to school, don't rush, and don't be afraid. Yes. Although it was the opening day, it was still a battlefield. Guan Xiangmei said, if there's anything, just talk to Min Tuesday, don't be shy. His school is nearby, and usually, he can help you a bit. Lin Yuzhen raised an eyebrow, not holding any expectations for Min Tu's help. Her eyes looked at the table in front of the window, where there was a dark object. Lin Yuzhen squinted, staring attentively for a moment. Oh, it was yesterday's rice. She forgot to eat. All right, thanks, Aunt. Lin Yuzhen said. After a while of instructions, Guan Xiangmei hung up the phone. Lin Yuzhen put her mobile phone down, sitting on the bed in a daze for a moment, then sighed. For a stepmother, whether sincere or acting, Guan Xiangmei was doing well. At least, until now, it seemed that everything was suitable, and no mistakes could be found anywhere. Previously, when she opened the school, Lin Ji had never cared about her like this. Lin Yuzhen threw her mobile phone onto the bed, crawled down from the bed to the floor, went to the table, and took the lunch bag. She opened it, took a bite. The white rice had turned bad, with a sour taste, probably because she left it out of the fridge. Lin Yuzhen rushed into the bathroom to vomit and rinse her mouth several times before feeling the fading taste. Even though Guan Xiangmei had said that Fu Mintu would take her to school, Lin Yuzhen didn't believe he would actually do it. Early the next morning, when it was time for school, she went downstairs. She didn't see anyone downstairs. Di Zhang was in the dining room. Lin Yuzhen drank a glass of milk, ate fried eggs, picked up a piece of toasted bread, held it in her mouth, then went out. As soon as she left the gate, she saw Lao Li standing next to the car, bowing his head to check his phone. Lin Yuzhen passed by, slightly tilting her body. Old Li quickly raised his head, the smile on his face not yet receding. Unconsciously, he rubbed the phone screen against his clothes, hastily saying, "Good morning, Miss Lam." Lin Yuzhen's eyes quickly swept past, seeing the smiling face of the boy on the mobile screen, pausing for a moment. She put the toast in her mouth and awkwardly responded while getting into the car, "Good morning, Uncle Li." Lin Yuzhen's new school was not in the same area as her new home, and a normal drive took about half an hour. She got out of the car and walked to the school herself. Lin Yuzhen reached the school gate, first lifting her head to appreciate the entrance gate of Pazhong School, which seemed quite large. She then headed towards the small square's signboard, following it straight ahead. She saw a place that was probably the main teaching building. A teacher came out, and Lin Yuzhen quickly took 2 steps forward, saying, "Excuse me, sir." The old teacher was approachable, with graying hair and a friendly smile. He immediately walked over. Lin Yuzhen hurriedly asked, "I am a new student who transferred here. Could you please tell me if the Year 2 teaching building is here?" The homeroom teacher for grade 10, Lu Fujiang, Year 2. Lu Fujiang was over 50 years old, teaching biology. He warmly welcomed the new student. Lu Fujiang, shaking hands, welcomed the new student. Lin Yuzhen nodded. The girl hadn't received the school uniform yet, wearing a white t-shirt and a black skirt, with her hair tied neatly into a ponytail. She was a very beautiful young girl, not the kind of unruly student. Lu Fujiang seemed quite pleased with her. From the school conditions to the quality of teaching, he asserted, although our school in City A is not considered the best, it is still a key senior high school. I can guarantee the teachers' professionalism and the quality of teaching. As for other aspects, I won't speak prematurely. Just last year, do you know the percentage of students in our school who advanced to the next grade? Lin Yuzhen was very curious. How much is it? Lu Fujiang hit the table once, 98%. Lin Yuzhen, wow. Her reaction made Lu Fujiang feel very satisfied. Do you know the admission rate to our school last year? I don't know. Lin Yuzhen, 9 out of 10. Lin Yuzhen, wow. Lu Fujiang was very pleased with this new student and led her to Class 10. Class 10 was at the end of the 4th floor corridor. Lin Yuzhen, carrying her empty bag, followed Lu Fujiang into the classroom. Lu Fujiang cleared his throat, speaking gently, "Is there something going on? Everyone, please be quiet. Let's go into the classroom." No one paid attention. Lu Fujiang wasn't angry either. "I am Lu Fujiang. Starting today, I am your homeroom teacher. We are about to overcome the two." A male student holding a broomstick behind him was extremely angry. "Who poured soup into my chamomile tea?" No one paid attention to the teacher's words. Lu Fujiang wasn't angry either. "I am Lu Fujiang. Starting today, I am your homeroom teacher. We are about to overcome the two." Lin Yuzhen felt that the 98% Lu Fujiang had just mentioned was probably exaggerated. She sighed, holding her empty bag, standing next to the podium, not changing her expression. She subtly moved closer to the door crack, bowing her head to listen as Lu Fujiang began talking about the mysterious old stories from his many years of teaching. In an instant, the classroom fell silent. No one was talking, and it was completely quiet below. Lin Yuzhen raised her head, following everyone's gaze towards the entrance. Zhang Qian stood at the door, wearing a dazzling school uniform, a white jacket, black trousers, and seemingly uncombed hair with a slightly messy appearance. His eyes drooped, his voice hoarse, and a strong nasal tone. "Teacher, I added exercises all night yesterday and arrived late." Objectively speaking, although Pazhong in City A was not the best school, it was considered a key high school. Every year, many parents tried their best to get their children enrolled. Moreover, this school was very wealthy. The number of books stored in the library was staggering, and the student dormitories were built like high-end hotels. Even the top floor of the cafeteria had Italian cuisine. Although it was basically vacant compared to upscale restaurants, people preferred going outside the school to eat fresh noodles and spicy hot pot. The inside area was also very spacious. Lu Fujiang was indeed proud of the school's grandeur. "Our school is big, isn't it? Our school even has money." And the fact that the supreme character like Zhang was studying here, Lin Yuzhen had already predicted his wealthy background. The issue was, in City A, there were many high schools like this. Why would he attend Pazhong, and why in Class 10? When she saw him, Zhang Qian also saw her. After 5 seconds of staring, Zhang Qian gave her a big yawn. Could it be that he expected her to be enchanted or something? Lu Fujiang didn't know Zhang Qian. He only saw a well-dressed boy who spoke casually and was very likable. However, he didn't have a school bag. "Huh? No school bag?" Lu Fujiang said, "Late, huh?" On the first day of school, being 2 minutes late is no big deal. Zhang Qian bowed slightly. "Thank you, teacher." Lu Fujiang looked kindly at him. "So, where is your homework?" Zhang Qian remained silent for 2 seconds. "I forgot to bring it." Zhang Qian was the last to arrive. Most of the seats near the windows had already been taken. Zhang Qian chose a seat inside, lowering his head to look at the male student sitting outside. He spoke calmly, very gently, "Give me a bit of room, thank you." After Zhang Qian entered, the atmosphere that was still lively just now suddenly became as quiet as a group of chicks being strangled. Not a sound was heard. Then, Lin Yuzhen saw the boy sitting outside. Under Zhang Qian's intense gaze, he nervously pulled out his school bag from the desk drawer, picked up the small water bottle on the table, stood up, and walked to the desk next to her, sitting down in the position beside the small aisle. Only Lu Fujiang didn't feel anything unusual and laughed heartily. "All right, Lin Yuzhen, go back to your seat." Lin Yuzhen, with an unchanged face, hugged her school bag and passed by the podium, going to the only seat in the whole class, with no other choice but to sit down. Lin Yuzhen tilted her head to look at Zhang Qian. The teenager leaned lazily against the wall, half lying on the desk, using his hand to support his head. He leaned over the edge of the table, his expression unchanged, seemingly undisturbed. Ponytail, long skirt, wearing a pair of small black leather shoes, long stockings covering the slender and beautiful legs. His eyes squinted, the eyelids very thin. The fair and delicate skin was so close that Zhang Qian could even see the tiny hair on her smooth little nose. Long eyelashes. Lam suddenly asked in a small voice, "Are you feeling unwell?" "Huh?" Zhang Qian stared at her long eyelashes, a bit distracted. "Yeah, a bit. Your lunch from yesterday," Lin Yuzhen continued, "I forgot to eat it, and when I woke up the next day, I found it had gone bad." "If it's bad, then it's bad." Zhang Qian didn't care if she ate it or not. Lin Yuzhen relaxed her shoulders. "The next character I want to introduce to you is Lai Lam, a person who is actually very good, just talks too much. Pazhong is indeed very large, with many green trees." From the main library, they walked towards the front, passing by the cafeteria. Compared to the library, Li Lim was more familiar with the cafeteria. At this time, it was still morning, and there was no one in the dining room. The two went from the dining room to the building where activities were organized, crossing a garden and a basketball court, with 3 outdoor basketball courts lined up. Lin Yuzhen didn't have a uniform. Although it was black and white like the uniform, her neatly folded skirt revealed a pair of slender and straight legs, making her figure look more appealing. A few boys with basketballs looked over, whistling twice. Zhang Qian sat under a basketball hoop, holding a bottle of mineral water. He had probably just come down not long ago, his gaze was still unfocused, carrying a drowsy feeling from just waking up. Beside him, a male student sat on the basketball, talking to him, looking towards Lin Yuzhen from time to time. Zhang Qian raised his eyes, glancing in her direction. Li Lim asked, "Do you know who Zhang Qian is?" The two had already left the basketball court at this point. Li Lim turned his head, looking around, and said, "They were playing ball over there, class 12. Li Lim continued, "He used to be in the same class as Zhang Qian." "Right, he should be in class 12 now." Li Lim spoke in a low voice. "Zhang Qian used to cause trouble in class 11. If he had been a bit more aggressive, he would have beaten his desk mate to death. When they took him out, he was covered in blood. Many students saw it, and they said his eyes and spirit at that time were extremely terrifying." On the basketball court, Zhongnan stared intently at Lin Yuzhen's back, exclaiming how beautiful she was. Zhang Qian didn't bother to react to him, unscrewing the water bottle and taking a sip. Zhang Qian slowly twisted the bottle cap, casually tossing it into the corner. The mineral water bottle flew at a perfect arc in the air, making a small sound as it accurately fell into the trash bin. "Class 11. Did you transfer here?" "Yeah." Zhongnan applauded, "Good news." "So, which class are you in?" "I know, class 10, my desk mate." Zhongnan, calm as ever, took 5 seconds to digest this information. "Your new desk mate?" "Yeah." Zhang Qian stretched backward. Zhongnan, the next character, Zhang Qian's friend. He continued to talk nonsense and commented on Lin Yuzhen's figure. Zhang Qian lifted his leg, stepping on the basketball beneath him and kicked it. Zhang Qian looked at him. "That's my desk mate." No, she's not your desk mate, Zhang Qian said. Pa Zhong allowed students to stay in the dormitory, but they weren't allowed to request it themselves. It required parental consent. Lin Yuzin wanted to stay at the school, not go back to that house. Lin Yuzin still called Meng Wai Kuo. Lin Yuzin said, "It's very good, the school is very big, and the teachers are all enthusiastic." After a while, she said, "Dad, I want to live at school." Meng Wai Kuo fell silent for a moment. What? No, Meng Wai Kuo rejected firmly, "You've never done many things. You want to try them all now?" Lin Yuzin said, "In the morning, I got stuck in traffic on the way to school. It's a waste of time." Not getting approval, father and daughter argued. She turned off her phone, turned off her computer, removed the SIM card from her phone. Lin Yuzin did all these things one by one. She just wanted to live at school, a simple and small request. Being in this place made her feel extremely upset. The next day, Lin Yuzin woke up early. When she went downstairs, Mrs. Zheng was still preparing breakfast. Seeing her, Mrs. Zheng raised her head in surprise. "Miss Lam? That breakfast, Lin Yuzin greeted her good morning and waved her hand. "It's okay, you don't need to rush. I'm going to eat at the school cafeteria." When Lin Yuzin arrived at the class, there weren't many people yet. Quite a few students were entering with breakfast in their hands. Lin Yuzin felt intimidated by this intense academic atmosphere, beginning to have some confidence in the 98% study rate that Lu Fujiang mentioned. She sat down with her bag of books and turned her head to see Lai Lam studying, noticing that he was drawing creatures. "Did we have a biology assignment yesterday?" Indeed, Li Lim didn't even lift his head. "No, it's a summer assignment." Lin Yuzin understood, this entire focused study atmosphere was all due to the summer assignments. She thought Zhang Qian must be pretending. Even though she didn't understand how someone on a temporary leave from school could get assignments to catch up on. Lin Yuzin turned to look elsewhere, glancing at the timetable. The first class was English, so she took out her English book, yawned, and lay down on the desk to check it conveniently. After 2 minutes, Lin Yuzin stopped at a pair of exercises, recalling what Lu Fujiang said yesterday about needing a parental confirmation letter and signature for staying in the dormitory. She casually pulled out a notebook, tore out a page, took a pen, and wrote Mei Weigua in large letters that didn't resemble an older man's handwriting. She sighed and randomly drew on the paper. About 10 minutes later, someone lightly tapped on the corner of her desk. Lin Yuzin unconsciously tilted her head and saw a hand with distinct knuckles. For some reason, she suddenly remembered a post on Weibo that she had seen a long time ago, where people voted on which part of a man was the sexiest. The answers were bizarre, but the highest votes were still for the hand, specifically the wrist bone. She raised her head, and Zhang Qian was standing at the small aisle nearby, glancing at her while holding a bag of soy milk. Lin Yuzin's gaze shifted to the location of his wrist bone, visible beneath his white shirt. The young man wore the school uniform jacket neatly, zipped up to his chest, and looked very clean. The fabric smelled faintly of fabric softener. Lin Yuzin even caught a whiff of the fresh, clean scent. She put down the pen, stood up, and Zhang Qian walked in and took a seat. Zhang Qian casually threw the bag into the desk drawer, glanced quickly at today's schedule written on the blackboard, took out the English book, sipped the soy milk, and opened it to the first page. Lin Yuzin tapped on the edge of the table, pondering for a short moment. She then moved closer to him and said, "Hey, Jean, my classmate." Zhang Qian didn't lift his head, sipping soy milk and bowing his head seriously to read the English book while writing. Lin Yuzin whispered his name again, "Zhang Qian?" A soft clang sound was heard as Zhang Qian's pen fell onto the desk. He paused for 2 seconds, showing no expression as he turned his head back. "You're good at talking. If you don't know any new words, you can ask me." "Thanks," Zhang Qian said. "My English is fine." Lin Yuzin looked at Zhang Qian, surprised. He pushed the English book forward, turned around, leaned against the wall, and shook his shoulders, looking at her with a joyful smile. The first time Zhang Qian saw Lin Yuzin, he felt that she wasn't as harmless as she appeared. Lin Yuzin lay on the table, her face looking both weird and indifferent. It wasn't clear what she had done wrong. Li Lim, sitting behind, and Jie Zinan, Zhang Qian's desk mate, were also quite shocked. Lin Yuzin and Zhang Qian conversed for the autograph with a normal volume, audible even to those sitting behind, causing them to be amazed and frightened. Classmate Zhang, I think that if we're desk mates, we should support each other. Lin Yuzin opened her eyes widely, beginning to fabricate. I want us to help each other, progress together in our studies. Sure, Zhang Qian bowed his head, smiling. How? I want you to help me write the confirmation letter and sign it. Later on, when you don't understand something, I can explain it to you. This condition of yours isn't very attractive, Zhang Qian said slowly. Our gang has always been carefree, never focused on studying. Lin Yuzin looked over, not knowing where he got the assignment from. Indeed, it was just like Lai Lam. In the basic exercises, he only answered the multiple-choice questions, leaving the large ones completely blank. Lin Yuzin felt that her writing was already beautiful, but Zhang Qian's handwriting was even better. Therefore, she also took a pen, wrote on the paper, "Do you gangsters not talk during class?" Zhang Qian, in fact, didn't talk much during class because he felt uncomfortable in the throat and didn't like to chat. He casually pushed the paper to the edge of the desk, turned his head, and said, "What do you want me to sign?" Top of form. Still in the English class, Lin Yuzin was a good student. She glanced over at the English teacher on the podium and leaned towards Zhang Qian. Zhang Qian once again smelled that scent, a mix of rose fragrance with the sweetness of apple pastry and mild milk. He lowered his eyes, focusing on the delicate outline of the girl's ear. He noticed a faint cartilage and a tiny ear hole. Lin Yuzin, lying on the table, leaned over and whispered to him, "The confirmation letter for living in the school dormitory. I want to stay at the school. Teacher Lu said I must have a parent sign and agree to confirm it, but my father disagrees and won't sign for me. I can't sign it myself." Zhang Qian heard clearly. Her desk mate wants to live in the school dormitory. Her father disagrees, so she wants to forge the confirmation letter and has come to him. So? Zhang Qian looked at her as if smiling, with a slightly nasal and hoarse voice. "Are you asking me to play the role of your father? I'm your foster father." Lin Yuzin wanted to press Zhang Qian's head against the wall to make him understand what being a father meant. She looked at him, remained silent for 2 seconds, then said, "Classmate Zhang, we still have 2 years to share the same class." Zhang Qian frowned. Is this a threat? The bell rang, signaling the end of the class, and Zhang Qian slowly stood up. His mind was still somewhat blurry from sleeping until noon. He sat in his seat for a moment, tilting his head. No one was beside him, his little desk mate had left. Glancing at the clock, it was 12 o'clock, probably time for lunch. Zhang Qian remembered the morning when the girl glared at him for a long time, then gritted her teeth. He couldn't help but laugh. At this moment, everyone had gone to have lunch. Except for him, the classroom was empty. He opened a window, and the sound of laughter and playfulness wafted in from outside. Zhang Qian leaned against the wall and yawned. Seeing 2 pieces of paper on Lin Yuzin's desk, he paused for a moment. Zhongnan invited him to have lunch. Sure, Zhang Qian replied without lifting his head, holding the pen and writing. Wait a moment, I'll be done right away. As he opened his mouth to speak, Zhongnan was shocked. What happened to your throat? Sore throat. Zhang Qian finished writing, put down the pen, folded the papers in his hand, and casually grabbed a book on Lin Yuzin's desk. He clipped the papers inside. Zhongnan felt puzzled. Who is Lin Yuzin? Zhang Qian didn't bother to answer him, placed the book back, and then stood up. In the morning, when he picked up the school uniform coat to drape over his shoulders, he casually shook it, flicking off any dust. Zhongnan glanced at the book. Is she your desk mate? Yeah. Nand bombarded him with 101 questions. Get lost, Zhang Qian mockingly scolded him. Lin Yuzin, without any acquaintances, alone, chose a rice vermicelli restaurant with clay pot dishes. When she entered, she found no empty tables except one in the corner next to a girl. Lin Yuzin approached and asked her, "Classmate, is there anyone next to you?" The little girl was quietly eating vermicelli. Suddenly hearing the voice, she startled, quickly raised her head, and shook it hastily. Eyes wide open, she stared blankly, still holding a mouthful of vermicelli, unable to speak. Indeed, a cute little girl, with bright eyes, slightly dark skin, a round face, resembling a chocolate candy? Lin Yuzin felt that her irritated mood had decreased significantly. She sat down beside her, ordered a portion of rice vermicelli, and began to contemplate how to deal with Meng Wai Kuo. No matter what, she didn't want to stay in that house. After thinking it over, even if she forged the confirmation letter and waited for Meng Wai Kuo to return, she couldn't avoid a heated argument. Sitting next to the brown candy, eating and chatting to make friends, she determined that the girl was timid and always afraid of this world, an innocent girl. While eating, Lin Yuzin took out her mobile phone and turned it on. From last night until now, her phone had been off. Sure enough, as soon as she powered on her phone, numerous messages from Meng Wai Kuo flooded the screen. Meng Wai Kuo, what did you just say? Repeat it for me. Meng Wai Kuo, Lin Yuzin, are you really ungrateful now? Meng Wai Kuo, have I treated you badly? I give you food, I give you drinks, I take you to school, your mother doesn't need you, and I raise you. Ridiculous, Lin Yuzin muttered, expressionless, and locked her phone. The screen instantly returned to black, bringing tranquility back to her world. She placed the mobile phone next to the table and continued eating rice vermicelli. Just as she bit into a fish ball, the restaurant door opened, and a series of laughter followed. Several female students approached, and the first one shouted, "Are there no more tables? All taken." Then wait a moment, I just want to eat rice vermicelli today. Wait for ages, it's so annoying. Oh, isn't there an empty space there? Pull a chair over and join us. The little brown candy beside her visibly stiffened. Lin Yuzin tilted her head and saw the small brown candy bowing her head, her long eyelashes trembling. The whole restaurant was full, except for the table where these girls were sitting. It was a long table for 4 people, and Lin Yuzin and the little brown candy sat on one side, facing the others. One of the girls approached Lin Yuzin, placing her hand on the table. Her fingers were clean and beautiful, and a simple red string was on her wrist. She said teasingly, "Our sister E, are you here for rice vermicelli too? Let's share a table." With a mocking and teasing tone. The girls were sitting down, 3 of them at the opposite side, and one of them pulled a chair here, sitting next to Lin Yuzin. After ordering their food, they sat and chatted, laughing loudly and a bit obnoxiously. Lin Yuzin sighed, eating a bit faster, wanting to finish quickly and go back. But after just a few minutes, they targeted the little brown candy. "Oh, Sister E, why aren't you talking? You should be friendly with your classmates." The girl with the red string sneered, "Ask him what he said." "A foolish person." Little Candy bowed her head, her hand trembling as she tightly gripped the chopsticks. They became more aggressive, mocking and wanting to bully the girl in front of Lin. Lin Yuzin could sense that the girl beside her was shaking. She closed her eyes. At this moment, the rice vermicelli for the girls with the red strings was also ready. The owner brought 3 bowls over and placed them on the table. They poured more vinegar into little brown candy's bowl and laughed scornfully. A faint whimpering sound came from the trembling little brown candy. Why did she encounter idiots everywhere today? Lin Yuzin pushed the clay pot closer, raised her head, threw the chopsticks onto the table, and made a crisp sound. The 3 girls fell silent for a moment. The one who was holding a bottle of vinegar floating in the air over little brown candy's bowl, turned her head to look. Lin Yuzin licked her lips and looked at her. "Are you blind?" The confused girl asked, "What?" The restaurant fell silent, everyone was looking at them. "What did I say that you couldn't hear? Are you not only blind but also deaf?" Lin Yuzin's frustration was now evident. "Annoying. Can't even control your mouth when eating?" They were puzzled, asking, "Who are you? Who am I?" Lin Yuzin narrowed her eyes. "I am her foster mother. Either shut your mouth and eat quietly, or..." Top of form. Lin Yuzin felt that maybe she and this city were not a good match. She quickly glanced at the three girls across, feeling a bit annoyed. She really didn't want to fight with the girls. Annoying, and it would ruin her gentle image. Zhang Qian was still standing outside the noodle shop, with an unlit cigarette in his mouth, looking inside. Zhongnan turned back and asked, "What's going on? Someone you know?" "Yeah," Zhang Qian bit the cigarette, "someone I know." Zhongnan said, "Oh, isn't that Li Ti Kai? It's not going to be easy." "Oh." Zhang Qian looked up. The girl had poured a whole bottle of vinegar into the bowl of the girl opposite. Zhongnan also saw it, widened his eyes, and said, "Isn't that Tu Nuyu?" The two who were standing and watching from outside remembered the names of the girls in the fight. This group of fierce girls was famous in the school, and they were bullying someone again. They also recognized someone familiar, Lin Yuzin. Zhongnan couldn't help but whistle, turned his head, and looked over at Zhang Qian. Lin Yuzin didn't say a word, just glanced at the table. The noodles were still hot, and the girl calmly pushed them aside. With one hand, she pushed the bowl of rice noodles in front of the girl, and with the other hand, she pressed the head of the first girl onto the table, making her scream. "Pay attention when you talk, older sister," Lin Yuzin whispered in the girl's ear, "or else next time, I'll press your head directly into this bowl of noodles." The girl with the red string by her side had reacted in time. She reached over, and Lin Yuzin stood up, leaning back to avoid it. It was also easy to hold on to her, causing her to fall to the ground. Amidst the noise of the scuffle, Candy, full of fear, begged Lam to stop. Lin Yuzin lowered her head, looking at her. She grabbed her hand, pulling her outside. This area had fewer hotels and restaurants, with a convenience store nearby. Lin Yuzin entered, bought a handful of candy sticks, and came out, choosing a strawberry-flavored one to offer to her. The girl stopped crying, sitting on the steps in front of the convenience store, wiping her eyes, looking pitiful. Lin Yuzin sighed, sitting down beside her. "Why cry? If someone bullies you, and you fight back twice as hard, they'll take it seriously. Crying won't make them stop bullying you. The more you're an easy target, the more you'll be bullied." The girl held a candy stick, lifting her head, her eyes red. "I can't fight back." "If you can't fight back, then curse them." Lin Yuzin casually picked up a fabric fruit-flavored candy stick, unwrapped it, and put it in her mouth. She taught the little candy how to resist in such situations, and the weak girl listened quietly. Lin Yuzin smiled, her beautiful eyes curved. "Do you think what I said makes sense?" Candy said, Thank you." "You're welcome." Lin Yuzin stood up. A lunch that had only been half-eaten was disturbed, and now there was no time to finish it. In the end, Lin Yuzin went to the school cafeteria, bought 2 steamed buns, and went back to the classroom, playing games on her phone. The midday break ended, and Zhang Qian returned to class. When he came back, Lin Yuzin was already asleep. The girl lay with her head resting on the desk, her school uniform coat, which was too big for her slender shoulders, slightly slipping off. Zhang Qian didn't call her or hurry inside, leaning against the entrance, observing for a few seconds. As the bell for the next class rang, Lin Yuzin furrowed her brows, slowly getting up from the desk. As she lifted her eyes, she saw Zhang Qian standing at the entrance, looking at her. The sleep-deprived girl rubbed her eyes. The first class in the afternoon was chemistry. Zhang Qian pulled out a new book from the stack, opened the first page, and began to write his signature. Lin Yuzhen only discovered the confirmation letter tucked inside the book 3 days later. At home, with Fu Mintu starting school at their institution this week, they hardly saw each other, and Lin Yuzhen presumed they would meet even less in the future. Lin Yuzhen didn't want to argue with Meng Weikuo anymore. Being at home was fine. The place was spacious and separate, quiet without any disturbances. But the previous night, as she went downstairs to pour herself a drink, she overheard the housemaid Zhang and Fu Mintu talking in the living room. The housemaid expressed fear that Lin Yuzhen and her father coming here to live would take away their family's possessions. Fu Mintu, however, claimed not to care about material wealth. He found the new girl obedient and quiet, but he didn't like her either. Lin Yuzhen stopped at the stairs. Holding an empty glass, she silently walked back upstairs. That night, she didn't take a single sip of water, and suddenly, she no longer felt thirsty. The next morning, Lin Yuzhen woke up after only 4 hours of sleep. When she went downstairs, the living room and dining room were still empty. Lin Yuzhen glanced at the time on her phone. It was already 5:30. She slowly went outside, following the electronic map to find a subway station. Passing by a 7-Eleven convenience store, she stopped for a moment. Entering, Lin Yuzhen bought 2 red bean paste-filled donuts and a box of fresh milk for breakfast, then headed to the subway station. As Lin Yuzhen took the subway to school, it was still early. She sent a message to Mr. Lai, telling him not to pick her up, and enjoyed her breakfast. By the time Lin Yuzhen arrived, there was no one in the class. She lay down on the desk, starting to catch up on her sleep. During the self-study break, Lin Yuzhen got up. Zhang Qian still hadn't arrived. Lin Yuzhen felt having a classmate who came to study late was a good thing. During her nap, she wouldn't be disturbed. It wasn't until the beginning of the 3rd class that her new gangster brother finally made his appearance. In Mr. Lu Fuzhang's class, Lin Yuzhen held up a book and saw the confirmation letter inside. It was signed by her parents and endorsed by Meng Weiguo, written by Zhang Qian. Lin Yuzhen turned her head, looking at the person sitting next to her. Zhang Qian was watching a video, lying lazily with his head supported on a stack of books. Lin Yuzhen wanted to apologize, but didn't expect Zhang Qian to genuinely help her with the confirmation. Lin Yuzhen felt truly sorry for her recent bad attitude towards him. During lunch break, Lin Yuzhen handed the confirmation letter to Lu Fujiang. Lu Fujiang didn't doubt anything. Since Lin Yuzhen submitted the confirmation late, the dormitory was full, and he needed to check with the dormitory manager to find a spot for her. He asked her about how she was adjusting to the new school. It's okay, Lin Yuzhen modestly replied. In front of Lu Fujiang's desk, there was a teenager standing, wearing a school uniform jacket with tight jeans, neatly groomed hair. Lin Yuzhen looked at him, feeling familiar, glancing at him several times. The teenager stared at her. After having lunch and returning to the classroom, she immediately felt a gust of wind, accompanied by a teenager crying loudly, "Dad! You really abandoned us to the police." Lin Yuzhen looked at the teenager in tight jeans lying upside down on his desk, slapping Zhang Qian's body. He seemed a bit bewildered. Zhang Qian didn't react in time, remaining dumbfounded for a few seconds. After recognizing the person, he exclaimed, "Aw! You're in class 10 too?" "Exactly, Dad. Why did you leave without telling us? Me and Xian Han were caught by the police. Mom almost got beaten when she vouched for us." Lin Yuzhen remembered the mop guy from number 2, with the messy ponytail and small floral tattoos on his arm. "Our character is Wang Jijiang." Wang Jijiang enthusiastically looked at her. "So, what are you thinking of getting for your tattoo?" "Oh," she made a simple sound, glancing at Zhang Qian, "I haven't decided yet." In Zhang Qian's mind, he unconsciously looked at Lin Yuzhen. Wang Jijiang boasted about his new tattoo inside his body. Zhang Qian raised his foot from under the table and kicked him. "Shut up!" Wang Jijiang mumbled. Lin Yuzhen chuckled, moving a little closer. In a low voice, she said, I submitted the confirmation letter this morning. Huh? Zhang Qian stopped rotating his pen, looking up. Oh. Lin Yuzhen looked at him. That. Zhang Qian raised his head. The girl hesitated. Zhang Qian was puzzled and furrowed his brows. Lin Yuzhen wanted to thank him. She looked at him and said, Give me your hand. Lin Yuzhen rummaged in her pocket for a moment, took something, and placed it in the palm of his hand. The girl's small, white hand, with her fingertips brushing against his palm, felt cool. Shortly after, a slightly cold object fell into Zhang Qian's hand. A quiet candy stick lay in the palm of Qian's hand. A stick of white candy, wrapped in a transparent paper, looked smooth and white. The flavor was peach.